Today on Locked On Rockies, as the Rockies continue to search for a new president of baseball operations and GM and all the other stuff they need to change in the front office, is there a team that you would like to see the Rockies model themselves after?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 9th day of October in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You are in the right spot, because that's what we do around here, is talk about Rockies baseball, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies as we navigate the offseason. And we continue our conversations about the big picture and the change in philosophy with the Rockies, another departure in the Rockies front office. And are there teams that you like their models? Is there teams that you like their approach, that you think the Rockies would benefit from being would benefit from running their business that way? We're going to dive into that and more on today's episode. Before we go any further, got to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So I wanted to start here, and we were talking yesterday about targeting GMs, about which teams, and I'm curious, and I'd love to know when you like the video and subscribe to the channel, by the way, and you fire off your Rockies hot take of what teams out there, what models do you like out there? What models would you like to see the Rockies recreate? And obviously you're not going to be able to do things one for one, and things are going to be interesting, because the Rockies, I think, as we've seen in some of the stuff and some of the quotes that have come out, the concept of just bringing in a big free agent or just trying to go with those big contracts doesn't sound like that's going to be the Rockies' approach or the Rockies' philosophy. So we don't see them being able to win in the margins. I'm sorry, win and immediately negate their issues by the big contract, by going out and signing some big splashy free agents. So I was curious, out of some of the teams that we've kind of seen the Rockies talk about, we've seen them talk about the Marlins, the Rays, a little bit about the Diamondbacks, kind of some of the just some of these type of teams, and I'm curious. This is something we talked a little bit when the Rockies played the Marlins and finish up the season against the Marlins there, and something that can harken back to the Rays as well. And it is that question of, after going through this experience, after going through this situation where you have had guys, the Rockies signing players to long-term deals, extending players, keeping players on the roster, bringing them, your Freeland, Senzatella, McMahon, just to name a couple, and even CJ Cron and others getting contracts, getting extensions under Bill Schmidt's tenure. Would you like to see the Rockies stay away from that and be really, really, really picky with who they re-sign and who gets the extended contracts? Would you like to see the Rockies start bringing in, taking that Marlins Rays approach of, we are going to really, really focus on development and getting picks and replenish the farm type of system. And if we know that we need to pull, make a move, if we know we need to sell, we're not going to stand pat here at the deadline. I think that this is a philosophy that could work for the Rockies. I just think it will be one of the, if not the most dramatic shift in how the Rockies, I think, view loyalty and those players, right? Where it comes to, the Rockies do like having those familiar faces. The Rockies do like having people that they can market and promote to the Rockies fan. The Rockies do like rewarding, loyalty and players that want to stay and remain in Colorado. The Rockies have been known to reward that. So are you going to be, is that shift? Because what comes with that, Rockies fans get, have a lot more a connection to some of these players and some of these rosters and some of these guys than say your Marlins and your Rays fans, for example. I think that is one way to handle it. But I think the Rockies need to be a more of a blend. I think the Rockies do need to be willing to spend the money and sign some most specifically bats, because I think the approach at each deadline really should be, and as much and this is something I have changed going after this year and everything. If you're out of it at the deadline, even if you might have a sniffing chance at competing for a wild card, when the Rockies make the trades, especially in the middle of the season, I think it should the approach should always be to gather arms, as it always is. I think the Rockies need to continue to try to bring in as many arms as possible throughout their throughout their dealings, throughout their trades, throughout their agreements, and what they're able to work with other teams, because that's going to be the most likely way for the Rockies to bring in pitching talent and develop pitching talent. Obviously, you got to bring that talent in, and then you got to do something with that talent, because that's the big difference here, and where the Rockies would need to step up. If the Rockies just started going bargain bin, not big, not doing big contracts, not extending, multi-year contracts, keeping it on the low, trying to find guys that can be, veteran guys that can play on a simple deal. If you're going to do that, you're eventually going to have to build up that roster with some guys. You're eventually going to have some guys that come in and pay a little bit more to bring in those bats, because you're not going to be able to bring in pitchers. I think that's going to be the biggest development. So as much as we sit here and say the Rockies, keep bringing these arms in, the Marlins and the Rays are able to turn that talent that they bring in, or draft, of course, as well. That's part of what their philosophies as well, drafting and developing. That development part is, I think is almost as big, if not the bigger part of the question here. Bigger part of the philosophy, bigger part of the change here that the Rockies need to see, because it's the Rockies have just not been successful in creating game-changing players. And I think that's another thing when we're talking about looking at the Diamondbacks as an example here, when you're looking at their team and what they're able to do in terms of creating some, really interesting, building up some really good players here, and really being a team that, it wasn't the best year this year for them, but it was still pretty good. I mean, in terms of you're still getting performance from a bunch of young guys here. Perdomo, 7 WAR season from Perdomo there for the Diamondbacks, and he is 25. Let's see here. Corbin Carroll, he is also 25. He finished the year with a 5.8 WAR season. And then we'll go here with let's see. I always fall for that. Ketel Marte always I think a little bit younger than he is. But Nelson, the pitcher, Ryan Nelson, 27, 3.5 WAR. These guys were able to, of course, they had some hype going into it and some momentum, but the Diamondbacks were able to get these guys to unlock that next level. So the Rockies not only have to be a team, they can't just take the one philosophy of being willing to tear it apart, sell, not commit too much to contracts like the Marlins and Rays do, but they have to be able to turn players into something like the Rays. Another good example of turning into, turning talent, consistently able to develop talent, and looking at the Diamondbacks again. I know that I only named 3 players, but again, getting these players into your system and then getting the most out of them. So I don't think that there's one system that you can immediately pull from and say and apply it and paste it over the Rockies. That's why it's going to be really important in these interviews to kind of, I think, the question of how does your success, how has what worked in your for your team, whether you're from the Marlins, the Rays, the Twins, the Diamondbacks, wherever. How can you take your model of success and how can you apply it to the Rockies? And again, I think that this is a situation where you have to, the question also will circle back to is this going to be approved and allowed by Dick Monfort? Because that'll get in the way of everything. But I think that there are elements, of course, and it's easy to say, well, they need to develop. But I think the Rays and the Marlins model comes back to me at least a little bit more in terms of being willing to make, being willing to call it or flip or punt on some seasons when they're a little out of hand. And these teams might be a little bit more, aggressive in that. And sometimes players, you could sit there and say, oh, maybe they sold too much. The Marlins technically were playing meaningful baseball at the end of the year. Rays, we're in a tough division. They might just be able, they might just need to retool in a couple of areas and get back to their home ballpark or whatever. But I think that these teams are the ones. I think how they handle they have shown that when they get a guy, they believe when they hit on a guy, when they get the performance, or they're I don't think they're too surprised when they get some of the performances that they've gotten from some guys, Stowers, for example. Because they believe in those moves that they make. And there's a reason why they make the moves they make and acquire the talent that they do. And then because they know they know how to acquire that talent. They're willing to make the moves to acquire that talent. And then they're able to develop that talent into something more. And now the Marlins haven't always had a long history of winning and success or anything, but they've been able to navigate, irrelevant, that riding that wave of being back and forth competitive nature. So I don't know. I don't think that there's just the one philosophy that approaches, but I do think I really like the success I see from those two teams in finding guys and just maximizing their abilities and values and getting the most out of them. But the biggest question, I think, in the biggest X factor is the Rockies and their inability to bring in free agent pitching. So how are the Rockies? Is that, how much of a factor is that going to be in the new philosophy and the new building of the Rockies front office? Speaking of the Rockies front office, there was another change. Let's talk about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that don't make this show possible, and that includes Rugiet. What do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a T-Rex? Confidence, pure confidence. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. It's not just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. It's got 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula, so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. The process is simple. Connect with the board-certified doctor 100% online, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Make sure to use our code so they know that we sent you. Locked On Rockies here, back with you all on this Thursday, October the 9th. Still navigating the questions there. And, so we're talking about the different approach. And I think, one thing that I do want is the Rockies to be able to carve out their own way, because I do think they have unique factors that these other teams don't. Maybe I'd say, I think a lot of those similarities in terms of market attendance, things like that, and streaming services and kind of, I think a lot of that. I think the Rockies do find themselves in a similar situation as the Arizona Diamondbacks. Teams that, similar areas of the country, similar kind of, the Diamondbacks obviously a lot more a little bit more successful and everything. I would say a lot more successful. But yeah, I think when you're talking about kind of market wise, I think they're a pretty good comp there. So that's why I always look to them as a team that why I think we can really pinpoint an issue here with the Rockies and why we knew something was off is just when the Diamondbacks and the Rockies run a similar level, and just how the Diamondbacks were able to just the different paths the two organizations went, where the Rockies downward trends each year. And then the Diamondbacks, it's kind of an up and down, but you're riding that thing that's also gotten you all the way to the World Series, and still with a team that's full of exciting and young talent, and a team that did sell at the deadline this year big time and has to retool and reevaluate, but hasn't put themselves so far behind that it's out of the question for them to be active. They've brought in some free agents. They've been aggressive here. They've been able to take advantage, maximize on acquiring their talent and negating their shortcomings. Obviously, it didn't result in the postseason this year, but still been in a lot more relevant state than the Rockies. Rockies 15th in attendance, Arizona 18th in attendance. The difference being about 500-ish, give or take, more fans a game, plus or minus. So I think, again, teams that are in the NL West, I think that the Diamondbacks are a team it'll be hard to obviously pry secrets from a division rival or something like that, but that's another organization I think that the Rockies could stand to learn from as well. Front office change happens again here as GM Zach Rosenthal resigns. We read here from Purple Row and Evan Lang's Rockies assistant GM Zach Rosenthal resigns. Rosenthal has been a member of the Rockies organization since 2006 after working with the Boston Red Sox and then Oakland Athletics. He joined the team as an intern in player development before being hired as a member of the baseball operations group. Rosenthal has served as the Rockies' assistant general manager for 11 seasons and was promoted to vice president following the 2021 campaign. He's also served as the organization's assistant general counsel. Thomas Harding spoke to Rosenthal, who confirmed that leaving the organization was his decision. I feel incredibly lucky to have been able to stay with one single organization for 20 plus years, Rosenthal said. So many amazing experiences and memories. My first full season was the World Series year. That was magical. I want nothing but success for the Rockies. The city deserves a team that competes because there's nothing like Coors Field in October. Well, agreed there. But another moment here, and another situation where not fired, not made to leave. Another situation where this is someone stepping back, and I think this is a situation where this person here, Rosenthal, I think also understood or seems to understand the need for the new approach. As much as we're talking about, what teams can you adapt from, what teams can you pull from, it doesn't matter until that's fully embraced and fully believed in inside that building. And for some of these people that have been there for a while, that have tried a lot of things, that are probably pretty burnt out on trying to get creative and trying to solve this puzzle. 20 years is a long time to be with an organization. There are people that are moving on from the organization that have been here a long time. When I see these changes, I do think that this does encourage that they are really doubling down on it's time for something new. Like the conversation there, according to Harding there, says that Rosenthal, it was his decision, and I think that's a decision where that is made that you get to by sitting there and saying, I gave it, we gave it our go, we gave it our shot. Time to see what's next for me. And time for this team to see what's next. I don't actually know if it's easy to have that conversation and say that thing to yourself, but I do think that this is a another look in the mirror moment for a Rockies front office official here, and now former Rockies front office official, where it's I'm not trying to beat up on the performance or anything, but I think it's a moment where you, at least if you are sitting there and saying, what this team needs is that refresh. What this team needs is the new voice. And it's probably very hard to get to that decision, to say that and make that call. But this opens up the door again to bring in someone else. This again opens up the door for whoever comes in next to fill that position, that with someone that can help them execute their vision. But it does seem, I mean, this to me seems like a sign of more change to come for the Colorado Rockies. Let's put a bow on this one, finish up the show for today, and look ahead to what's next coming up on Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Gametime. Nothing like catching a baseball game live, really anything live. The energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team or your band or favorite comedian in person, but actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees, takes all the fun out of it. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. It makes buying tickets super simple. You can see your exact view from your seat before buying, and fees are included. So you know your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. It's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way you're going to buy tickets. Download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Segment number 3 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you again so much for joining us here. And let me know. I want to hear from you, Rockies fans, in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comments section. What do you think is going to be a secret? What is something that you believe is the secret to success here for the Rockies, and as they try to rebuild and bring in some new minds? What do you think is stuff that the Rockies haven't tried enough of as they go through this? Because really it's the importance of this evaluation period just can't be understated, because we really we can't say that the Rockies haven't tried to do certain things or gone in certain directions or made certain moves. It's just, what does this look like? What do these pieces look like? How does everything come together and in the current state of the Rockies to start formulating a vision or a path or an identity? And I think that's going to be kind of the interesting question to look for and watch as this situation develops. How early can we, is this going to be something that we can see an identity forming right away? Can we see immediate differences right after the hire? Is it going to be boom, big changes, big move, big approaches when it comes to coaching staff, roster construction? How much change is going to come with these new people, with this new organization, with this new organizational structure? And what does that and after all of this too, when do we hear about what this means? When does Dick Monfort himself talk to us about what's going on? When does he acknowledge things will be different and believe and actually buy into and really double down on and believe in doing something differently? So still a lot of questions and still not some easy answers here. I still think I'm still with, it's okay with the Rockies to do their due diligence here and poke around. I think you really do need to talk to some people, bring it, see what people are saying, because it'll be interesting to see how many people the Rockies bring in, with how many, what does this new hire, How many new hires will they make on top of that? What will their staff look like? What does the commitment, behind the scenes look like financially wise, to how much money can you put into these areas? What does the payroll and stuff look like for the Rockies? What type of team can they be when it comes to the offseason and spending and things like that? Because lately hasn't been much. It's been very, 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 very cheap, very, very low level. When do we get to find out more about that? These are kind of some of the questions still popping in my brain as they continue to navigate this search here. But we'll only know once they bring someone in. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB and Locked On MLB Game Night. Oh, my goodness. The playoffs heating up. Teams extending series, fighting tooth and nail. It's keeping things exciting. It's going to be a long couple of days for all the Mariners fans that I know out here. But we'll all the reactions, all that and more for what has been an absolutely very, very entertaining playoffs so far. Baseball playoffs, man, one of the best in the business. Playoffs are great around the board. Always an extra level of intensity, always a good time to watch. But man, there's just something about baseball that just brings a different energy that those sports can't recreate and can't capture, at least in my mind there. But so Locked On MLB, Locked On MLB Game Night's got you covered from around the league and all your postseason action. And of course, if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, and Buffs, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.